Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 112, and I'll be talking to Tiffany Dilworth, a motivated individual who's always striving to find innovative ways to support others. Tiffany Dilworth received a master's in community counseling from Oklahoma State University. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor who specializes in PTSD, grief, and sexual trauma. Ms. Dilworth is an international speaker and a fellow in Thantology, Death, Dying, and Bereavement. Tiffany is an author of 11 Tools to Help Manage Aftermath of Trauma and Types of Grief. She has a history of being the founder, a non-for-profit organization, and started multiple businesses. Enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome to Tiffany. How are you, Tiffany?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
I am well, and I'm excited that we get to have this conversation because it's been a while since we've been bouncing back and forth to connect. So I am curious to learn more about you and to get into the realm of the mastery of your skills and craft that you have harnessed and garnered over the years on many different levels. So yes, people can read all about your bio in the links. But I want to begin with a really big, bold question because we're just going to go straight in and just cut all the other fluff talk because why not? And the big, bold question I want to start with is, what do you believe about yourself? And do you feel it defines who Tiffany is today?
Wow, great question. That is really deep. Who do I believe about myself?
What do you believe about yourself?
What do I believe about myself? I believe I am an ever-evolving person. I believe that there are certain gifts and tasks that I'm given, and throughout life, they've just transformed into where I am now. And I have confidence that they're going to continue transforming to where I'm going to go in the future. Um, And the second part of your question, what was the second part of your question?
Does it define who you are?
Hmm. It definitely plays a huge role in who I am. Um, I think because I am a person who is focused, who is determined, who is motivated, I think those qualities and attributes that I have plays a huge role in me developing these skills and the calling that I have in my life and the tasks that I'm designed to do. So I definitely think they go hand in hand, for sure. Yeah, great
How
question.
how did that shift for you? And when was that tipping point? Because I imagine there was a component when you went, oh, that defines me, but it's not been a positive trait. But that defines me and it's a positive component to Tiffany and how I want to blossom in life. Was there a tipping point for you on that?
Yeah, so I've had several tipping points. I guess going back to who am I? I feel I am someone who hopefully instills hope and encouragement to others. Uh, and so, just thinking about life experiences when I was younger, I was the kind of person who always wanted to make people happy, always wanted to cheer people up. And then I got older, towards middle school and high school, I began to become this person who would just listen. I'm a listener, everyone else talks. So that's a way of comforting and being there for others. And then I transitioned into college, and it became more of a healing place for me. And so when I began to heal through some trauma that I had experienced, so taking a step back, unfortunately, when I was in high school, I had experienced sexual assault from a classmate of mine for a few years. And in college, I had the opportunity to go to heal from that and to begin my healing process, should I say. And later on in college, I experienced some losses, which I had the opportunity to begin to heal from that as well. And I went from this place of trying to support others, but not having the capacity because of my own trauma, my own challenges that I was experiencing. So I had to pause for a little bit and focus on healing myself and finding peace and forgiveness for all the things that people have done. And as time went on, I got to a place of the other side of healing, the other side of the hurt and the agony and the pain. And that's where I'm at now. I'm able to go back to being that person of instilling hope and encouragement to others and helping them understand that, yes, challenges come up in life. At the same time, we all have resiliency. We all have some component inside of us that can help us to keep going and keep moving forward and to be able to focus on healing and finding peace and restoration despite all of the horrific things that may have happened to us in our past.
Yeah.
And so, even though as a child I didn't understand that, I just knew I want to make people feel better, And so, when I say I've transformed, I'm ever evolving, my task is still the same: is to give encouragement and support to others. It's just evolved over the years to where it is now, where I have diverse platforms. I'm able to share what's it like to have peace and how to find peace, how to embrace forgiveness. Um, so yeah, it's kind of where my trajectory of life and how I got to where I'm at, and going back to that ever evolving kind of person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When was the last time that you perhaps deepened that awareness of, yes, I'm evolving, and yes, I'm here to encourage and support others on their healing journey as well? When was the last time that was it? Most recently, I guess.
Yes, yes, excellent question. So as I mentioned, there was many times, but the most
Mm-hmm.
recent time was actually just this past month,
Mm-hmm.
January. So I took the entire month of January off. No work, no focus on anything outside of myself. Uh, so step back. Last year, 2023, I did a first time ever a retreat. It was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. So that was actually a deeper moment that I had. And one of the things that they recommended was to do it every year. So I said, okay, I want to take the month of January and do it again. It
Nice.
wasn't a full, the entire month wasn't complete silence,
Yes.
but there were several days in there that was nothing but silence. And I just sat
Yes.
with my thoughts. And so that was probably the most recent time where I did a deeper, I guess, cleansing, a deeper, just sitting with myself and acknowledging where I'm at in my journey and identifying where I want to go in my journey and the different steps I will need to take to get to the next place, whatever that might be. And of course, I wish there was a roadmap that said do A, B, C, and D. But it's more about, like we had talked about earlier, just listening to our intuition, listening to the inner person that we have, and just sitting with that for a little bit and letting them decide this is the next step and this is the next step. So it's kind of what I did for January, just identifying what are these next steps and going down that path.
Mm-hmm. Well, the natural question for me to ask would be, what are those next steps? But I kind of want you to hold on to that because I want to get to
Okay.
those a little bit later.
Okay.
Out of that and out of your process of what you've learned and what you've gone through, while the obvious might be, this is what my calling is, have you recognized that calling or that insight or that message change as you evolve and change? So, what has been your callings and what is your calling at this moment?
Yes, excellent question. And so this goes back to grad school. And so, as I had mentioned before, I had experienced sexual assault when I was in high school. And our brain is such an amazing organ. When some of us experience such traumatic events, it will literally shut down those memories and store them away. And that's what happened to me for several years. I had no recollection of the sexual assault. And then one day I'm sitting in grad school. My professor, she's talking about different types of sexual assault. And it's about me and maybe 12 other students in the classroom. We're taking notes, looking at the teacher, taking notes. And she shares the difference between rape and sexual molestation.
Mm,
She gave that definition, a light bulb went off, and I realized, oh my goodness, that's what happened to me. I was sexually
mm,
molested.
mm,
And all of a sudden, all these images started pouring in. It's called flooding in the
mm,
mental health field. And all these images just came flooding in. And I literally felt like I was going crazy.
mm,
And I was looking around the room and no one else saw these images. And so I'm a believer in God. And I said, God, I don't know what this is, but please make it stop. And it just shut down.
mm,
Later on, I began to sit with those thoughts and I asked God, help me to figure out what's going on and where this stuff came from. And that's when I realized what had happened to me in high school. And so for those years, my brain had protected me because I just didn't have the capacity to deal with the truth.
right.
And I'm sure many of us can think of times where our brain protected us because we just didn't have the capacity to deal with whatever challenges and trauma and intense emotions that came from that horrific event.
Mm,
And so throughout college, I was able to process and work through that. And it led me to then have a desire to help others who experience sexual assault. So I specialize in sexual assault. I specialize in trauma as well. And then, unfortunately, I had several major losses in college. And so that's what led me to focus on grief. And
mm,
so, as a clinician, I specialize in those two areas, trauma and grief. And then throughout the years, I've more recently have transitioned, I think after 2023, going to that silent meditation retreat and really embracing this concept of forgiveness and finding peace despite the horrific experiences I've had. I was able to find peace and it's changed my focus now. So again, it was on trauma, sexual assault, grief, PTSD. Now it's more on peace, not only finding consistently getting back to peace, but helping others to find peace and to consistently get back to peace as well. So that's the trajectory of, I guess, the people I'm called to. I
mm,
definitely still work with individuals who experience loss, experience trauma as well,
mm,
but it really is about helping individuals to get to this place of peace. Yeah,
mhm. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those.
of course. Yeah.
Vulnerability in all experiences, regardless, I think, how much we work through them on a cognitive space, somehow still get activated in the energetic body space.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. I'm glad you share that because a lot of us don't realize that we many times will hold our emotions inside of our body,
Mhm,
and our physical body is just it's just a tool. We're all spiritual beings. You know, I don't want to get too far into metaphysics, but we're all spiritual beings that are inside of a physical body. And this body is a tool to help communicate what's happening inside of us. So, for example, if I'm smiling, most people would say, okay, she's happy. Or if I'm frowning, she's probably upset about something. So it's just a way of communication. Same thing with walking to a new space. When we walk into a room, we can pick up on what may have been going on before we walked in the room. So,
mhm,
for example, let's say two people were arguing and we walk in the room and we're like, something's off. I think there was some conflict before I walked in here.
mhm,
So, energy can definitely linger in spaces as well. And so when it comes to this concept of trauma and grief, it can definitely impact the frequency. It can definitely impact our energy levels as well. So it's very important that we are mindful of our energy levels. And when we embrace healing, when we embrace peace and forgiveness, it changes. Uh, it changes our energy, and other people can sense that as well. Some other people might have more insight than others, but it's
mhm,
definitely a skill that can be developed and grown as well. And so,
mhm,
as a clinician, my goal, my purpose, my drive is to help people to get to this place where their energy and their mentally emotional well-being is at a place of peace and calmness and stability as well. Yeah.
mhm. It's very important, absolutely, but talking about the metaphysical world, that's my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
In
Mhm.
memory is stored there, but until we transform it on a cellular level, even in the physical body, it will reactivate. It will reactivate the harmonic of that frequency can get here at any given time, be it through a hearsay, be it through media, be it through a conversation, a memory, a sight, or a sound. It will reactivate it. You know that from a clinician standpoint, but I know that from an energetic standpoint. So melding the two together, to me, is the key piece.
Mhm.
So yes, we can cognitively understand it, but we need to understand and be in relation with the physical body. Yes, it's a body, but it's not just a body. Yes, we
Right.
have these things called phones and computers and homes, places that we live, but all of those things carry a vibrational frequency. And that is what we attend to. So when you're at home, the house is a little messy. So you go through and clean it physically, but there's also an energetic component that has to happen in order for you to walk into the room and go, oh my gosh, it feels so much lighter. It feels so much cleaner in here. To be able to be in that space, cleaning the physical energy connected to the emotion on the physical body is equally crucial from my standpoint as it is from a mental space.
And I'm glad you shared that because you're absolutely correct. Um, when it comes to my field and more of the cognitive approach, I focus
Mhm,
quite on behavioral aspects.
mhm,
And so when we are able to engage in certain behavioral techniques and skills, it going back to that concept of triggering, triggers are going to happen, like you had mentioned. The question is, how long does this trigger last? Is the question. And so that's where the behavioral components come in on my side, is that we focus on what are some techniques we can utilize? What are some skills we can embrace, some different thought patterns we can embrace. So that
mhm.
way we are able to reduce the length of the trigger, the intensity of the
Right.
trigger as well. So I definitely see that connection between the two. And you said it so beautifully, the connection between the two. I love it. I'll actually share a grounding technique. This is actually probably one of my favorites. Only takes a couple moments to do it. But when actually, it's okay if we do it together. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah. And so there are times where we might have a flashback or intense experience in our body that we're unaware of. Sometimes bring us to the present moment. The here and the now can be very valuable. And sometimes it's about us touching the ground physically. That's helped a lot of my clients in the
mhm,
past.
mhm,
And so there's other ones related to our senses, burning our hands under hot water, cold water. The one we're going to do just for a moment is related to sight. And so, just for a moment, I want you to look around your space. I'm going to do it with you.
mhm.
I just want us to identify two or three things that help us to feel more calm in our space. That's all it is. So, I'm going to go ahead and identify
Mhm.
mine. Okay. Were you able to identify yours?
Yep.
Wonderful. And so I'll share with you if you're okay with that. Share
Mhm,
it. I'd love to hear what you found. So I have some aromatherapy, more specifically lavender. Lavender is a very calming scent. I have some of that next to me, and just looking at it, it's a purple bottle, which helped me to feel calm. And seeing the lavender and knowing the scent helped me to feel calm as well. The other one is I have some tea next to me, and tea is very soothing for me. I like drinking warm and hot things. Something comforting about that.
mhm,
And that took maybe 5, maybe 10 seconds for us to do.
mhm.
And just calmness came over. So, what about for you? What were you able to identify and what kind of helped you to feel more calm in that moment?
I think perhaps my natural go-to when I am in a state of uncalm, if you will, would be nature. So the beautiful lily behind me is a great relationship. I have great relationship with plants personally, and that is a mechanism, a tool, a conduit that I lean into quite heavily when I support individuals on their healing journey too. And for myself, because I'm a conduit to support them, because
Mhm.
I do it on a much deeper level. Um, so yeah, nature has a beautiful way of bringing exactly what we need. But we have this thing called, as you've identified, the mind, and we all have those amazing squirrel moments that take us on a ride and leave us from presence. So,
Yes, I love that. I love that. I'm in the same path as you. I definitely love nature. Nature can be very
mhm,
calming and soothing,
absolutely.
definitely
Absolutely.
grounding in a
Yeah.
lot of different things. Yeah.
So, on this journey and on this path that you have built and carved out with some of these tools, what do you feel are some of the key attributes that connect you to your maybe one of your purposes and your calling? What would
Yeah.
they be for you?
Key attributes.
Mhm.
I'd probably say focus. I think focus is a key attribute. Um, it's so easy, especially in today's day, to get distracted by what's happening in media, in the news, in other countries, with family, friends,
Yeah,
uh, social media, reality TV. I mean, the list can go on and on and on.
that's right.
Uh, and so, what happens, unfortunately, is we get so boggled down with all this stuff all around us that sometimes we lose sight of ourselves. We lose sight of our purpose, our goal. We lose sight of peace. I'm a firm believer that we are here on this planet to be in peace, not to
Mhm.
be in consistent turmoil.
Mhm.
That's just my personal perspective. I know everyone has
Mhm.
different perspectives, perfectly fine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when I notice that I'm taking in a lot from outside of me that's not contributing to peace, um, I think that the quality that I have that I'm have learned to become really well at is to redirect and to stay focused. So that might mean removing certain people, certain things, certain social media platforms out of my life, so that I am to be able to focus and redirect on what's bringing me peace. What do I need in this present moment? Is there a certain song I need to listen to? Is there a certain touch that I might need? Is there a certain smell that I might need to experience to get to this place, back to this place of peace and calmness? So I definitely think that attributes, again, would be just staying focused in this crazy world that has so much things bombarding us right now.
Mhm. There's a lot. There's a lot. Do you have a
Yeah.
particular tool or practice, or perhaps prior to the one that you just demonstrated to? Anything outside of that that brings you back to that place of what is my purpose? What am I doing here? What's happening? Let me get recentered.
Yeah, it's a great question. So actually, when I was in my late 20s, I heard this speech by Earl Nightingale. It's called the Strangest Secret. And that was actually me becoming aware of my calling. So childhood, I wasn't fully aware, but when I heard this, one of his activities that he had us do was to list our passions and our desires for 30
Mhm.
days. I didn't do the whole 30 days. After 7 days, I immediately knew what it was because it just kept
Mhm.
coming on my list over and over and over. Was
Interesting.
speaking, giving comfort and support to others. It just kept happening over and over. So that's when I fully understood, fully acknowledged, maybe not understood, but fully acknowledged and became aware of my
Yeah.
calling. And so since then, I will say that, um, yes, led me down this path of where I am today. Um, and so I apologize. I think I got caught up in the story. I forgot the
That's
initial
okay.
question.
That's
Can you
okay.
ask me that
How,
question
how
again?
do you get back on purpose?
Yes, back on purpose. Thank you. And so that was when I found out my purpose. And so what helps me to get back is routine. I have certain routines that I do that help me to come back to where I may have lost my path. And so some of the routines is every evening I have a space in my home that's kind of like a jazz lounge, very soothing and calming. I have certain lights that I dim at certain colors, and then I do some lo-fi music, and I just sit in that space. And then every morning I drink something hot and warm to soothe. And then every day I create a list of 3 to 5 things I want to accomplish that day. And so by me doing my routine, it helps me to stay on task of what my calling is. There
Mhm.
are times, like I mentioned, distractions might pop up. And so I pause for a moment and I ask myself, am I still on the same trajectory? Am I still on the same path that's designed for me? Or maybe it is time for me to change paths as well. And so sometimes I will go back to the Earl Nightingale.
Mhm.
Actually, I listened to that this past month just to make
Nice.
sure I'm still in the same space.
Good.
And so sometimes I will go back to The Strangest Secret that he did, the recording that he did, and it'll help me to make sure I am in alignment with whatever path I'm supposed to be on at this time.
Mhm. Mhm. So while you consistently revisit your own purpose and your own trajectory of what you do and how you're doing it, what is your bigger intention with all these skills and tools and experiences and things that you collect and gather over the years? What's the intention behind
Right.
all of it?
Yeah. And I think it stays consistent. It may, the way it looks may change.
Mhm.
The capacity may change. The size of individuals, the number of individuals I might speak to may change. But I think the consistency that I've noticed is just bringing comfort to other people, instilling hope and encouragement into others, reminding people of their resiliency as well. I think that's been the common theme just throughout my life. And again, it's changed different platforms. The way it's shared might be different. The groups might be different. Again,
Mhm.
sometimes it was related to sexual trauma, grief.
Mhm.
Now it's peace in general.
Mhm.
But that overall theme has kind of always been there for me, just
Mhm.
instilling hope and encouragement and resiliency.
Mhm. How are you giving that to yourself?
Excellent question. The month of January, perfect example. Taking a step back and just figuring out, how do I rejuvenate myself? What are the things that I need? What are the things that I need to hear? I need to experience. So I have a really amazing friend. They do an awesome job pouring love into me, giving me words of affirmations. And those are something that I really embrace on a daily basis, are affirmations. So that's one way that reminds me of the hope that I have, the peace that I want to continue experiencing.
Mhm.
When it comes to resiliency, again, going back to this friend, they know me very well. They know some of the challenges I've experienced in life.
Mhm.
And they remind me of, hey, you're doing an amazing job. And I can genuinely take in that feedback because they know where I came from
Mhm.
versus a stranger coming up to me saying, wow, that was amazing. It's like, oh, thank you. That's appreciative.
Right.
But when they say it, it's a whole different level
Mhm.
because they actually know, again, where I came from, the challenges I actually experienced, the nightmares, the nights where I didn't go to sleep because the nightmares were so
Mhm.
real. I didn't want to
Mhm.
experience that again. So having support system in my life that reminds me of my resiliency, that reminds me of the places where I've been and how I've come from those places, and now I'm at a much healthier place in life. So I definitely say that those are the things that rejuvenate me and help remind me of my resiliency and getting back to peace and embracing hopefulness for the future.
Mhm. Mhm. It's beautiful. And it's so important to have a team,
Mm.
to
Mhm.
have a team who you can lean on without them feeling it being burdensome.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that because you're right. Not everyone in
Mhm.
our support system has the capacity to be
Mhm.
supportive of us. So we have to give permission for them to walk away
Mhm.
sometimes. Sometimes we think, well, this is my parent, this is my sibling, this is my cousin, this is my whoever it might be. So they should be able to stick with me in this. They should be able to tell me what I need to hear. But
Right.
sometimes certain people just don't have that capacity.
Yeah.
So it's about us sitting in that reality and accepting that they're doing the best they can with what they were given in life. And at this moment, their best isn't going to help me. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean I don't love them.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean I want to reject them. It just simply means when I'm going through my challenges, this is the person that probably won't lean on.
Mhm.
because they aren't able to give me that support. And then making space for the people who are able to give that support.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can be challenging to figure out who can and who can't give support.
Mhm.
Um, because again, we want certain people because of their title to be able to give that support. So sometimes it can be very challenging to let go and say, I love this person, I'm going to hang out with them. But when I'm in my challenging moments and I need that support, they're probably not my go-to person. And so that was one of the things that I had to work through, was just figuring out who were those support people. But you're absolutely right. It's very crucial for us to have a healthy support system that
Mhm.
has the capacity to give us that support as well. And there are times where we aren't going to have anyone to give us that support. I know I've experienced that in life, which means I had to be my biggest cheerleader. It meant I had to give myself that support. I had to give myself those validation words that I wanted someone else to give to me. And that takes uh, a lot of sitting in your truth to figure that out, to sit and say, what do I need to hear? If this person had the capacity, what would I want them to do? What would I want them to say to me? And then I have to say that to myself. And so there are moments where we might have to experience that until a physical person comes into our life and is able to fill that role. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I definitely agree. Support systems can go a long way. And until you get your support system, we kind of have to be our own support system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious with your practice and perhaps your educational experiences even, is there a component where you guide clients and individuals through the redefinition of what family is?
Mm,
Because the version of family that has been fed to all of us, and no doubt will consistently be fed to upcoming generations, is they're going to be there for you all the time. Those are the people who you are supposed to call when you're in strife, trouble, tears, whatever that looks like. And they should, with no exceptions, have the capacity to support you through that process. How do you, but we know that's not true.
yeah.
I think every single family probably may have, bold statement, have experienced at least one person who falls under the banner of family who has not been able to have the capacity to support somebody at that deeper level. So, how do you go about your practice, your tools or mechanism to support individuals to say, this is what family looks like, or don't touch it, or what does that look like in your practice?
Yeah, great question. And unfortunately, I do receive that quite often, especially in recent years. Fortunately, a lot of families just aren't able to be there for each other. And so it's about grieving that loss because it's a form of loss when
Mhm.
we have this expectation of this person should be able to, or I expect this of them, and they aren't able to, or they
Mhm.
choose not to.
Mhm.
That's very disappointing. It can cause us to experience grief. And
Mhm.
so many times it's just sitting with my clients in that loss and asking, how does it feel for this person not to be able to be here for you? And there is a lot of anger there. And behind anger is actually disappointment.
Right.
Behind anger is actually sadness and
Mhm.
hurt and pain.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is about helping my clients to be able to recognize what's behind this anger that you have towards this person, not saying this thing or saying something that you felt was detrimental towards you. So it's helping them identify what is behind that anger
Mhm.
and then helping to get to this place of forgiveness, forgiving that person for not being able to be there in that capacity, forgiving that person for not doing or saying what you wanted them to do or say.
Mhm.
And part of that includes acceptance,
Mhm.
accepting that they are who they are. And that might take sometimes me sitting with my clients and help them to identify. So, for example, there's a young lady I was working with. She had expectations of her mother. And so I had to sit with her and ask her, well, tell me about your grandparents. How did they treat her? And come to find out, they didn't give her mother a lot of tools. So I asked her, how do you expect your mom to give you tools that she herself never received?
Mhm.
How do you expect her to give you all these affirmations that she herself never actually received? So sometimes it's about going to that logic part of our brain
Mhm.
and really sitting and analyzing the family history. Do they actually have the tools to be
Yeah.
able to do this? Sure, society tells us they should have the
Yeah.
tools,
Yeah.
but in reality, do they actually have them? And so that's part of that acceptance component is
Mhm.
accepting that they may not have the tools. They weren't given the tools for whatever reason from their parents or their caretaker. And once we get
Mhm.
to that place of acceptance, once we make that person human, because what we've done is made
That's
them
right.
superhuman. You should be able to do this and do that and still manage your life and help me manage my life. So we
Mhm.
put them on this pedestal of what they should be, what we think they should be, not realizing they're human.
Yeah.
And so by us accepting, it humanizes them. And when we make somebody human, it's easier for us to forgive them. And
Mm.
so once we've gotten to this place of forgiveness, that's where peace comes in at. And there's been so many clients I've had come in. I've taken them on this journey. And once they embrace forgiveness, they share with me that this load has just been taking off of their shoulders.
Mhm.
And that's where true peace comes in at. We're able to see people for who they are, and we're able to grieve the things that we did not receive. And we're able to accept that they are not able to give us whatever it is we think they should have been able to give us. And we forgive them. That is when we are able to truly embrace peace. And that's
Mhm.
where smiles come on my client's face and they come in with joy all the time. Well, not all the time, but a lot of times,
That's right.
because this load has been taken off their shoulders.
Yeah.
But does that mean they're always in this space? Of course not. Um, Family interactions happen, phone calls happen, and they might get triggered again. We talked about triggers just a moment ago.
Mhm.
A parent or a family member or friend may say something and it triggers us to remember, oh, that's right, they can't do this for me. And I'm really angry about it. And so it's about going through that process again. And the good thing about going through this process, the more we do the process, the easier it gets, the more quickly we're able to get to that place of forgiveness, being able to acknowledge that's their truth, that's their reality. I see them for who they are. I accept it. I
Mhm.
forgive them.
Mhm.
It goes by so much quicker the more we practice it. Just with any
Yeah.
skill, the more we practice it, the better we get at it.
That's
And so
right.
it's about helping us and myself to consistently get back to this place of peace. I wish I could just stay in peace 24/7. That's not my truth yet, maybe for some people. But it takes time because, again, triggers happen. So you have to get back to that place of peace again. Uh,
Mhm.
Again, the more we practice, the easier and quicker we're able to get back to that place of peace.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
Of
sharing that.
course.
So I know we are almost wrapping up, but I have one big final question.
Yeah.
What's next for Tiffany?
Excellent question. Yeah. And so several years ago, I was listening to Oprah, and she says that every year she has a motto for that
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
And so I've done the same thing for the past several years. I think one year was all about education. I just want to get as much education as I possibly can. Last year was all about peace and forgiveness. I just want to embrace as much peace, forgiveness, and show as much love as possible. So my model for this year uh, is about staying in a place of peace as long as possible and sharing with others as much as I possibly can. So I kind of see this year as my year of podcast. I
Oh,
want to get on as many podcasts and share what's it like to get to this place of peace despite all the past challenges we may have experienced. So I definitely am so thankful for this opportunity
yeah,
to be able to share this valuable information and hopefully helpful information as well. And
absolutely.
when it comes to specific places, that's like what we said earlier, all about intuition. Wherever the inner spirit leads me, that's the direction I'll go in.
Yeah.
But for this year, I feel led to just go on as many speaking engagements as I can and share the same thing I shared with you today.
Hmm.
Concept of peace.
Beautiful. Well, I am extremely grateful for this delicious conversation and the vulnerabilities that you have also shared on this call as well. So I honor you for that, and I hold space for you, even though you have cognitively gone through that process, but energetically, I'm holding space. So I'm grateful for this conversation. Thank you for taking the time. And I perhaps look forward to hearing other podcasts or other interviews that you will be on for the remainder of this year. So thank you again, Tiffany. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for holding that space for me. And thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been wonderful talking with you. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.